Mother Bear. Struck by lightning. A baby's blanket held the secret cure. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. Haley Bennett sat by the window in her grandmother's cottage, watching the woods outside darken under gathering storm clouds. Her 6-month-old daughter Lily cooed in her arms, clutching an old patchwork blanket that had belonged to Haley's great-grandmother. The blanket was worn and faded, with strange patterns that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. "Just you and me tonight, sweetie," Haley murmured to Lily. Her husband Michael was stuck in town because of the storm, working late at the fire station. The cottage creaked as wind began to howl through the pines. Lily gurgled happily, playing with the blanket's tassels. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Haley stood up and moved closer to the window, bouncing Lily gently. Through the trees, she spotted movement. A large mother bear was foraging near the clearing behind their cottage, her 2 cubs trailing behind her. The bigger cub kept bumping into his smaller sister, making the little one stumble. "Look, Lily, bears," Haley said, pointing. Lily's eyes widened with baby wonder. The mother bear was magnificent, her dark fur rippling with each movement. She stopped suddenly, sniffing the air, then nudged both cubs protectively behind her. Lightning cracked across the sky. The mother bear turned toward the cottage, her cubs pressed against her massive legs. For a moment, Haley swore the bear was looking directly at her through the window. Then another flash lit up the woods, closer this time. The storm was building fast. Haley pulled the curtains closed halfway, not wanting to block her view completely. She'd always felt safe in this cottage, even during storms. But something about tonight felt different. The blanket in Lily's hand seemed to warm slightly, though that was probably just her imagination. Rain began pelting the roof. Lily startled at the sound, but Haley rocked her soothingly. "It's okay, baby, just rain." But her eyes stayed on the window, watching for the bears. They had disappeared into the deeper woods, seeking shelter. Another lightning bolt split the sky. This one was different. It came down with terrifying precision. Haley jumped as the thunder followed immediately. Too close. Way too close. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. A sound like screaming, but not human. It came from the woods, from exactly where the bears had been. Haley's heart raced. She pressed her face closer to the window, straining to see through the driving rain. There, in the clearing about 50 yards from the cottage, was a smoking crater. And beside it, the mother bear lay motionless, steam rising from her singed fur. Her 2 cubs were circling frantically, their high-pitched whines carrying over the storm. The bigger cub kept nudging her shoulder while the smaller one pressed against her belly, both trying desperately to wake her. "Oh, God," Haley whispered. She shifted Lily in her arms, her mind racing. What could she do? The bear needed help, but Haley couldn't leave Lily alone in the cottage, and even if she could, what help could she possibly offer to a lightning-struck bear? Lily began to fuss, picking up on her mother's distress. The blanket in her tiny hands grew warmer, almost uncomfortably so. Haley looked down at it in surprise, but Lily had calmed herself by bringing a corner of the blanket to her mouth to chew on. The cub's cries grew more desperate. The smaller one had given up trying to wake her mother and was now curled into a tight ball beside the unmoving form. The larger cub stood over them both, making a low, keening sound that broke Haley's heart. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scene in sharp relief. The mother bear hadn't moved. Her chest barely seemed to rise and fall. Haley noticed something else. Where the lightning had struck, the ground around the bear glowed with an eerie blue light that pulsed with each of her shallow breaths. Suddenly, the cottage lights flickered and went out. Emergency lanterns clicked on automatically, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Lily whimpered, not liking the change. Haley bounced her gently, whispering comfort, but her eyes remained fixed on the window. In the dim light, Lily's blanket caught her attention again. The patterns on it were definitely moving now, swirling in the lantern light. And it was warm, not burning hot, but noticeably warm. Lily had stopped fussing and was staring up at her mother with unusually alert eyes. The larger cub suddenly looked up toward the cottage. In the next lightning flash, Haley saw its eyes gleaming through the rain. The cub took a hesitant step toward the house, then stopped torn between staying with its mother and seeking. Haley's phone was dead. The power surge from the lightning strike must have knocked out the cell tower. She couldn't call Michael or emergency services. She was alone with her baby, watching a tragedy unfold in her backyard. The smaller cub had started whimpering again, a heartbreaking sound that seemed to cut through the storm. Haley felt tears burning in her eyes. These weren't just wild animals. This was a family fighting for survival. Lily made a soft cooing sound and pushed the blanket toward the window. For a 6-month-old, it was an unusually purposeful gesture. The warmth from the blanket had intensified, and now Haley could feel it through her sweater. "What is it, baby?" she asked, but Lily just gurgled and pointed small fingers at the window. The blanket's patterns were now clearly moving, flowing like water toward the edge of the fabric. Outside, the mother bear's breathing grew more labored. Each exhale created a small cloud of vapor that the rain couldn't wash away immediately. The blue glow around her was fading, and with it, perhaps her life force. The larger cub made its decision. It started trotting toward the cottage, leaving its sibling with their mother. Haley's heart pounded. What would a grieving, frightened cub do when it reached the house? But, as she watched, she realized the cub's approach wasn't aggressive. Its head hung low, and its steps were uncertain, almost pleading. The cub stopped just outside the porch light's range, where Haley could barely make it out. It sat down in the rain and let out another of those heartbreaking whines. Then it did something that made Haley's breath catch. It bowed its head, almost like a request, a plea for help. Lily's blanket was now so warm that Haley had to adjust her grip. And as if in response to the cub's gesture, the patterns on the blanket swirled faster, creating a small whirlwind in the fabric that tugged gently at Haley's hand. The thought came to her unbidden. What if the blanket could help? No sooner had the thought formed in her mind than the blanket actually jumped in her arms. Haley nearly dropped Lily in surprise. The baby laughed delightedly, as if this were a normal playful game. The patterns on the blanket, which Haley had always assumed were just decorative stitching, now pulsed with a faint golden light. "This is crazy," Haley muttered, but she couldn't deny what was happening. The warmth from the blanket wasn't coming from Lily or herself. It was emanating from the blanket itself, and it felt almost alive. She looked out the window again. The mother bear remained still, but now Haley could see the blue glow around her had intensified, matching somehow with the golden light from the blanket. The watching cub perked up its ears, almost as if it sensed something was happening. Haley's grandmother had always said there was something special about this blanket. She'd inherited it from her grandmother, who had it from hers. 4 generations of women in her family, each passing down whispered stories about how the blanket had magic properties. Haley had always dismissed these tales as superstition, folklore to make an old family heirloom seem more important. But now, holding her baby and watching the bear's life slip away, she wondered if those old stories might have held more truth than she'd ever imagined. Lily reached out with both tiny hands toward the window, making urgent baby sounds. The blanket tugged again, stronger this time, pulling toward the door. Haley's grip tightened on Lily, who had begun to crawl just last week and was quite pleased with her newfound mobility. "We can't go out there," Haley said, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince, herself or Lily. "It's dangerous. Lightning, bear, we need to stay inside." But the mother bear's breathing was becoming even more ragged. The smaller cub had started making a noise Haley had never heard before, a rhythmic whimpering that sounded almost like a lullaby. The larger cub remained by the cottage, its gaze fixed on the window where Haley stood. Thunder crashed directly overhead, rattling the windows. In that moment of chaos, Haley made a decision that would change everything. She grabbed her raincoat from the hook by the door and wrapped it around herself and Lily, making sure the baby was completely protected. The blanket she draped over both of them like a hood. The moment the blanket touched the raincoat, the fabric seemed to shimmer. Water beaded and rolled off it like oil, refusing to penetrate. Haley stared in disbelief. Her raincoat had never done that before. She opened the door slowly. The wind immediately tried to rip it from her hands, but she held firm. The larger cub whined with what sounded like relief and turned back toward its mother. Without giving herself time to think about the insanity of her actions, Haley stepped out into the storm. The rain was torrential, but somehow she and Lily stayed dry. It was as if the blanket created a protective bubble around them. Her boots squelched in the mud as she made her way across the clearing, but her footing remained steady despite the treacherous conditions. As she approached the mother bear, the full extent of the damage became clear. The lightning strike had created a charred path across the bear's back, and large patches of fur were missing entirely. The skin underneath was raw and blistered. The blue glow emanated not from the bear herself, but from the ground, specifically from what looked like crystallized earth where the lightning had struck. The smaller cub looked up at Haley with eyes that seemed far too human, far too aware. It didn't run or show fear. Instead, it scooted closer to its mother, making room for Haley. Lily had been unusually quiet throughout their journey, but now she began to babble urgently. The blanket in Haley's hands grew warmer still, almost hot now. The golden pattern swirled faster, creating small whirlwinds across the fabric's surface. Without fully understanding why, Haley knelt beside the massive bear. Up close, she could see the shallow rise and fall of the bear's chest, each breath more labored than the last. The larger cub moved to her other side, completing a circle around their mother with the smaller cub. Haley gently pulled the blanket from around herself and Lily. The baby protested, making grabbing motions at her beloved comfort object. But then Lily saw the bear up close and her protests turned to coos. She reached out with one small hand, touching the edge of the blanket with the other. "Here, baby," Haley whispered. "Let's help." Together, they began to lower the blanket onto the bear. The moment the fabric touched the singed fur, three things happened at once. First, the golden light from the blanket exploded into a brilliant aura that surrounded the entire mother bear. The patterns that had been swirling on the blanket now lifted off the fabric itself, dancing in the air like living things. They were symbols, Haley realized. Ancient symbols she'd seen before in her grandmother's journals, but had never understood. Second, the blue crystalline formation in the ground began to resonate with the blanket's energy, creating a harmonic vibration that Haley could feel in her bones. The sound was neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but it was powerful, primal. Third, and most startling of all, the bear herself seemed to respond. Her breathing deepened immediately, becoming stronger. The charred flesh on her back began to shimmer with the same golden light, and before Haley's disbelieving eyes, new fur began to sprout. Lily clapped her hands, delighted by the light show. The cubs watched with rapt attention, their whines turning to soft rumbles that might have been purrs. But then came the twist none of them expected. The blanket began to unravel, not tearing or fraying, but deliberately dismantling itself. Threads of different colors, golds, silvers, blues, greens, rose from the fabric like smoke, spiraling upward into the stormy sky. As they rose, they seemed to pull something from the air itself, gathering energy from the storm. Haley felt a surge of loss watching her family heirloom disappear, but she knew this was what needed to happen. The threads formed a glowing cocoon around the bear, and slowly the massive form began to lift from the ground. "Mom?" Haley whispered, suddenly hearing her grandmother's voice in her memory. Some magic only works once. When the time is right, it gives everything it has. The bear floated a foot off the ground, supported by the cocoon of light. Lightning struck again, but this time, instead of destroying, it fed into the magical display. The thunder that followed wasn't threatening. It was almost musical, like a deep bass note in a symphony. Lily pointed excitedly at the sky. When Haley looked up, she gasped. The storm clouds were parting, not because the storm was ending, but because something was coming through. A shimmering vortex appeared directly above them, and from it descended what could only be described as balls of starlight. Each sphere of light was the size of a marble, and there were hundreds of them. They fell gently, like snow, landing on the mother bear, the cubs, Haley, and Lily. Wherever they touched, they seemed to absorb into the skin, leaving behind a tingling warmth. The mother bear's eyes fluttered open for the first time. They were not the eyes of an ordinary bear. They glowed with an inner light, intelligent and ancient. She looked first at her cubs, then at Haley and Lily. In that gaze, Haley saw recognition, gratitude, and something else, a shared understanding that transcended species. As the last of the threads from the blanket merged with the bear, the cocoon dissolved. The mother bear gently lowered to the ground, but she was transformed. Her fur now had an iridescent quality, shifting colors with each movement. The bald patches were gone, replaced by fur that seemed to have been woven from starlight itself. The blue crystals in the ground began to pulse faster, and to Haley's amazement they started to grow. What had been simple crystalline formations became flowering vines that spread across the clearing in intricate patterns. Where each crystal flower bloomed, the scorched earth healed, becoming rich and fertile once more. The larger cub approached the transformed mother, sniffing curiously. When its nose touched her fur, it too began to glow. The smaller cub followed suit, and soon all three bears had the same iridescent quality to their coats. But the magic wasn't finished yet. The mother bear rose to her full height, easily 8 feet tall, and made a sound that was part roar, part song. In response, other animals began emerging from the woods. Deer, raccoons, owls, even a family of skunks, all drawn by the magic that had been unleashed. Each animal that approached was touched by a falling sphere of starlight. Some underwent subtle changes, antlers that now gleamed with an inner radiance, wings that shimmered with impossible colors. Others showed more dramatic transformations, their forms enlarging or becoming more ethereal. Lily was clapping and laughing, completely unafraid of the gathering of wild creatures. She reached out toward a small raccoon that had ventured close, and the animal touched its paw to her tiny hand. A sphere of light passed between them, and suddenly Lily's eyes glowed with the same inner light as the bear's. Haley felt a chill, despite the warmth of the magic. This was beyond anything she could have imagined. Her daughter, her baby, was somehow being made part of this ancient magic. "Don't be afraid," a voice said. Haley spun around looking for the source, but there was no one else visible. Then she realized the voice hadn't come from outside. It had spoken directly into her mind. "The child is chosen," the voice continued, "as you were chosen before her, as your grandmother was chosen. The blanket was merely the beginning, a key to unlock what has always been within your bloodline." "Who are you?" Haley thought back, somehow knowing the voice would hear her thoughts. "I am what connects all living things. I am the bond between species, the bridge between worlds. Your grandmother called me the forest spirit, but I have as many names as there are stars." The mother bear moved closer, her cubs flanking her. She lowered her massive head level with Haley's face. Up close, Haley could see reflections of other forests, other worlds, in the bear's glowing eyes. "We are grateful," the voice said, and Haley knew it was the bear's consciousness communicating with her. "Your kindness has awakened something that has slept for generations, but with awakening comes responsibility." Lightning flashed again, but now it was colored. Purples, greens, and golds dancing across the sky. The vortex above them was expanding, and through it, Haley could see glimpses of other realms, floating islands, underwater kingdoms, forests made of crystal. "What's happening?" Haley asked, both terrified and entranced. "The barriers between worlds have weakened," the forest spirit explained. "Your family has long been guardians of these boundaries, but the duties were forgotten as generations passed. Tonight, they are remembered." The smaller cub approached Lily, who was still being held in Haley's arms. The cub gently touched its nose to Lily's foot. The baby giggled and reached down, grabbing a handful of iridescent fur. Light pulsed between them, and a symbol appeared on Lily's forehead, a swirling mark that looked like a combination of a bear paw print and a sun. "The mark of the guardian," the voice intoned. "Your daughter will grow up knowing her purpose. She will not walk alone in this duty." As if to emphasize this point, all the transformed animals moved closer, forming a protective circle around Haley and Lily. The deer bowed their antlered heads, the owls hooted in harmony, and the smaller creatures chittered what sounded like pledges of allegiance. The storm was changing now. Instead of threatening, it had become a celebration. Colors swirled in the clouds, and the rain had transformed into something that felt more like liquid starlight. Where it touched Haley's skin, she felt warmth and energy flowing into her. "But wait," Haley protested, suddenly remembering. "My grandmother's blanket, it's gone. It destroyed itself to save you. How will we—" "The blanket was never the magic," the bear interrupted gently. "It was a teacher, a guide. Its purpose was always to prepare its bearer for this moment. Look at your hands." Haley looked down and gasped. Her palms were glowing with the soft light, and patterns similar to those that had been on the blanket were now etched into her skin in shimmering lines. When she turned her hands over, the patterns had reversed, creating a mirror image on the other side. "You carry the magic now," the forest spirit explained, "as your daughter will carry it after you." The older cub approached Haley next, and she felt a warm presence touch her mind. Images flooded her consciousness. Forest paths hidden from human eyes, ancient trees that had witnessed the birth of magic, underground springs that could heal any wound. Knowledge was being shared, generations of understanding passed on in seconds. Lightning struck once more, but this time it hit Haley directly. Instead of pain, she felt an explosion of awareness. Suddenly, she could sense everything: the heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet, the whisper of wind through leaves, the slow dance of stars above. She could feel the life force of every creature in the clearing, could understand their thoughts and emotions without words. Lily babbled something that sounded suspiciously like bear, and reached for the mother bear again. This time, the massive creature lowered her head fully, allowing the baby to pat her gently. More symbols appeared on Lily's skin, not just the mark on her forehead now, but delicate patterns tracing down her arms and legs, visible through her clothes. The child will be our connection to the human world, the bear's consciousness communicated, as we will be her connection to the world beyond human understanding. The vortex above them was spinning faster now, and objects began falling through. But these weren't destructive, they were gifts, seeds that glowed like opals, feathers that changed colors with each movement, stones that hummed with internal music. A particularly large object descended slowly, a staff made of wood that seemed alive with growth, vines and flowers sprouting and withering and regrowing in an endless cycle. It landed gently at Haley's feet. "For the guardian," all the animals seemed to say in unison, their voices harmonizing in her mind. Haley reached for the staff with trembling hands. The moment her fingers touched the wood, she felt a surge of ancient magic flow through her. Images flashed through her mind. Her grandmother holding this same staff, and her grandmother's grandmother before her. She saw them performing rituals, healing wounded animals, mediating conflicts between predator and prey, and opening portals to other realms. The responsibilities of their position became clear. Her family hadn't just been caretakers of the forest. They had been bridge builders between worlds, ensuring that magic remained balanced and that no species grew too dominant or destructive. A particularly bright sphere of light descended directly toward them. Unlike the others, this one pulsed with multiple colors and seemed to contain something solid within. As it lowered, Haley could see it wasn't actually a sphere, it was a cocoon. And inside, the bear cubs noticed it too, their excitement palpable. The sphere touched down next to the mother bear, and the light coating dissolved like morning mist. Inside was another cub, smaller than the other two, its fur pure white, and already bearing the iridescent quality of its transformed relatives. Our lost one, the mother bear's consciousness touched Haley's mind. Taken by dark magic 6 moons ago, now returned by the power you have helped restore. The reunion was heartwarming. The mother bear nuzzled the white cub while her other children circled around, welcoming their sibling home. The white cub's eyes opened, revealing pupils that swirled like galaxies. But this emotional moment was interrupted by a disturbance at the edge of the clearing. Something was approaching. Something that made all the transformed animals tense. The guardian magic was stirring, and now Haley could feel it too. A presence that felt wrong, discordant with the harmony they had established. From the tree line emerged a figure that was neither fully human nor fully animal. It walked on 2 legs like a man, but had the proportions of a beast. Its eyes glowed red in the magical light, and its presence seemed to drain the vibrancy from everything it passed. The Shadow Walker. The forest spirit's voice carried a note of warning. He has sensed the awakening. He comes to claim what is not his. The mother bear roared, a sound that shook the earth. The other animals arranged themselves defensively, forming a barrier between the newcomer and Haley with Lily. "What does he want?" Haley asked, gripping the staff tightly. "The child," came the answer. "The power she now carries. The Shadow Walker feeds on magic, but pure magic burns him. He needs a young guardian to corrupt, to turn the gift toward darkness. Lily, as if sensing the threat, pressed closer to her mother. The mark on her forehead glowed brighter, and for a moment she seemed older than her months, her eyes knowing and alert. The Shadow Walker raised one clawed hand, and darkness began to seep from the ground around him. Where it touched the newly healed earth, plants withered and died. The creature's voice, when it spoke, was like grinding stones. The balance shifts tonight. Too long have the guardians kept the worlds apart. Give me the child, and I will show them the power of unity. You speak of unity, but bring only corruption. The Mother Bear's response resonated through the magical connection. Leave this place, Walker of Shadows. Your time passed long ago. The creature laughed, a sound devoid of warmth or joy. Time? Time is meaningless to those who exist between worlds. The child will come with me, willingly or not. He stepped forward, and the darkness around him surged. Several of the smaller animals cried out as the corruption touched them, their magical transformations beginning to reverse in twisted, painful ways. Haley felt anger rise within her, not just her own, but the righteous fury of generations of guardians. She raised the staff, and it blazed with light. The symbols on her hands activated, spreading up her arms in glowing patterns. "You will not touch my daughter," she declared, her voice carrying power she never knew she possessed. "And you will not corrupt this sacred space." The confrontation between light and shadow was about to begin, and Haley knew that everything, the fate of the magical worlds, her daughter's future, the balance between realms, hung in the balance. The Shadow Walker moved first, sending tendrils of darkness toward the protective circle of animals. Where the darkness touched them, their newfound magic faltered. A raccoon's iridescent fur dulled instantly. An owl's glowing eyes faded to ordinary amber. The animals cried out in pain, not physical, but spiritual, as if the very essence of their transformation was being stolen. Haley raised the staff high, and it responded to her determination. Light erupted from its tip, pushing back the encroaching darkness. But she could feel the strain already. The Shadow Walker was ancient, powerful, and had been feeding on stolen magic for countless years. The staff alone will not be enough, the Mother Bear warned. He has grown strong in the spaces between worlds. "Then what can we do?" Haley asked, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of maintaining the protective shield. The white cub, the one who had been missing, approached Haley. Unlike its siblings, this cub hadn't grown to match their size. It remained small, almost delicate, but its eyes held depths of knowledge far beyond its apparent age. "I have been where the Walker keeps his prisoners," the white cub communicated, its voice in her mind like wind chimes. "In the between, where all the stolen magic gathers, there are others, guardians who came before you. He feeds them false hope to keep their essence fresh." A chill ran down Haley's spine. "My grandmother? She disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone said she got lost in a storm, but she lives still," the white cub confirmed, "trapped in the between, but her rescue weakened the Walker. It is why he seeks the young guardian now, to replace what was lost." Hope and horror mixed within Haley. Her grandmother was alive, but trapped in some nightmare realm. The Shadow Walker's assault intensified. The ground itself began to crack, fissures of darkness spreading like veins across the clearing. From these cracks rose shadowy forms, corrupted versions of animals, twisted reflections of their true selves. "Mom!" Lily suddenly cried out, her first clear word. The mark on her forehead blazed brighter, and to everyone's astonishment she spoke again. "Grandma, lonely. See her." The baby's eyes had changed, the irises swirling with the same cosmic patterns as the white cub's. Somehow, Lily had connected with something beyond their realm. "The child sees what we cannot," the forest spirit said. "She bridges worlds without effort. This is her true gift." But with that gift came vulnerability. Haley could sense the Shadow Walker's increased interest. His attacks became more focused, tendrils of darkness specifically targeting the space around her and Lily. Just then, something unexpected happened. The remaining strands from her grandmother's blanket, the ones that had been absorbed by the mother bear, suddenly emerged from the bear's fur, glowing more intensely than before. They wove together in the air, creating a complex pattern that Haley recognized from her grandmother's journals, the portal weave. The bear mother's sacrifice created more than healing, the white cub explained. It created a bridge, a way to reach those trapped in the between. The portal shimmered to life, and through it, Haley caught glimpses of a realm that existed in perpetual twilight. Floating islands connected by bridges of solid light, crystals that grew like trees. And there, on the closest island, "Grandmother," Haley gasped. Her grandmother stood trapped within a crystal formation, but alive. She wore the same robes Haley remembered from childhood, decorated with symbols that now glowed with inner light. When she saw Haley through the portal, her eyes widened in recognition and fear. "No!" her grandmother mouthed, gesturing frantically. "Trap! He wants—" The Shadow Walker roared in rage, realizing his deception was revealed. He had been using her grandmother as bait, knowing that any guardian who attempted rescue would expose themselves to his influence. But the portal was already affecting everything. The magical energy flowing through it was destabilizing the Shadow Walker's darkness. Cracks appeared in the black tendrils surrounding them, golden light seeping through. The truth weakens his power, the mother bear realized. But the portal must be anchored, or it will tear both realms apart. Haley looked down at Lily, who was reaching toward the portal with both small hands. The mark on her forehead wasn't just glowing now. It was rotating, aligning itself with symbols visible in the portal's energy. "She's the key," Haley whispered. "But I won't let you use my daughter as a sacrifice." "Not sacrifice," the white cub corrected. "Evolution. Every guardian must choose their path. Some build bridges through force, others through surrender. Your child seeks to do neither. She will become the bridge itself." Before Haley could process this revelation, the Shadow Walker launched his most desperate attack yet. The darkness coalesced into a massive form that vaguely resembled a bear, a mockery of their protector. This shadow beast charged toward them, its path one of complete annihilation. The transformed animals fought back with everything they had. Deer launched themselves at the creature, their antlers now weapons of pure light. Owls dove from above, talons crackling with magical energy. Even the smallest creatures contributed, their combined magic creating barriers and distractions. But the shadow beast was too powerful. It swatted aside their defenders, each impact scattering more of their magical essence. The mother bear and her cubs fought valiantly in the front line, their combined roars creating shockwaves that disrupted the darkness, but they too were being pushed back. Haley felt the staff in her hand growing hot, almost too hot to hold. It was drawing power directly from her, and she could feel her energy depleting rapidly. If the battle continued much longer, she would collapse. Then Lily did something that changed everything. The baby began to hum. It wasn't an ordinary baby sound. The humming seemed to contain multiple tones, harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. The mark on her forehead expanded, sending glowing lines across her entire body. These lines connected to similar patterns appearing on the animals, creating a web of light that bound them all together. Through this connection, Haley suddenly understood what her daughter intended. Lily wasn't trying to fight the darkness, she was trying to understand it. The humming was reaching out to the Shadow Walker's consciousness, seeking the source of his corruption. And then, in a moment of terrible clarity, Haley saw the truth through this connection. The Shadow Walker hadn't always been evil. Once, he had been a guardian too, the very first, in fact. But he had grown possessive of the magic, had tried to control rather than guide. His transformation into a creature of darkness had been gradual, fed by jealousy and fear of losing his power. He's lonely, Lily's mind touched theirs all. Lost his family, scared of ending. This revelation created a pause in the battle. Even the shadow beast hesitated, its form flickering with uncertainty. You seek to fill emptiness with power stolen from others, the Mother Bear addressed the Shadow Walker directly. But magic cannot replace love. Connection cannot be forced. The Shadow Walker's red eyes dimmed for a moment, a hint of the being he had once been showing through. Then what would you have me do? I have walked this path too long to turn back. Every path can be walked backward if the will exists, the forest spirit intoned. But first, you must release what you have taken. The portal expanded at this pronouncement, now showing not just the realm where Haley's grandmother was trapped, but multiple locations. Other guardians, other stolen souls, all suspended in time and space by the Shadow Walker's magic. If I release them, the Shadow Walker said slowly, I will diminish. I will fade. All things fade, the Mother Bear replied gently, but some things endure, legacy, lessons, love. Lily's humming intensified, and the web of light connecting all the creatures began to pulse with a specific rhythm. It was a heartbeat. Not just one, but many, harmonizing together. The Shadow Walker's form began to dissolve at the edges, the darkness converting back to something resembling light, though still tinged with shadow. The child, she shows me what I forgot, what I lost in my fear of losing. With tremendous effort, the Shadow Walker began to release his captives. The portal filled with light as consciousness after consciousness was freed. Among them, Haley's grandmother stumbled through the gateway, falling to her knees in the clearing. "Mom!" Haley cried, rushing to her side while still carrying Lily. Her grandmother looked aged but alive, her eyes clear and knowing. "You've done what I could not," she whispered. "You've found the true heart of guardian magic, not control, but connection." But the crisis wasn't over. With each release, the Shadow Walker grew weaker, his form becoming more unstable. The realm of the Between was losing its anchor, threatening to pull everything and everyone into its chaos. "The portal," Haley's grandmother warned. "It needs a new stabilizing force, or it will consume both realms." The animals gathered closer, their combined magic creating a support structure for the failing portal. But even their power wasn't enough. Something more was needed, something that could bridge the gap between redemption and dissolution. The white cub stepped forward. "I was born in the Between," it announced. "Neither fully of your world nor fully of others. I am the natural bridge." Before anyone could protest, the small bear walked toward the unstable portal. As it did, its form began to change. It grew larger, its fur becoming translucent, taking on the appearance of stained glass. Each step left paw prints that shimmered with portal energy. The Shadow Walker, nearly formless now, reached out with what remained of his consciousness. "Wait, I see now. There is another way." In a moment of clarity purchased at the cost of everything he had been, the Shadow Walker shared his final gift. the knowledge of how to transform the portal from a temporary bridge into a permanent connection, one that could be controlled rather than destroyed. The cost, the white cub warned, now standing at the portal's threshold, is to become eternal guardians of the threshold itself. We will exist in both realms, neither fully here nor there. The Shadow Walker's form completely dissolved, but instead of vanishing, it transformed into pure energy that flowed into the portal. This energy restructured the gateway, making it stable but fundamentally changing its nature. Lily's humming reached a crescendo. The baby's entire form became translucent, radiating light from within. Through their magical connection, Haley felt her daughter offering a choice, not just to herself, but to all of them. Bridge? Together? Lily's consciousness asked. In that moment, Haley understood the true nature of the choice her daughter presented. The portal could be stabilized, but it would require willing guardians to maintain it. Not trapped like the Shadow Walker's prisoners, but transformed into beings who could exist in multiple realms simultaneously. Her grandmother took her hand. "The line of guardians has always stood at thresholds," she said. "Perhaps it's time we did so literally." The mother bear and her cubs moved forward as one. "Our magic was awakened by your sacrifice," the bear mother said. "We too will guard this threshold." One by one, the transformed animals approached the portal. Each made their choice freely, understanding that their roles were changing but not ending. Haley looked at her daughter, then at the portal. Through it, she could see the truth of what awaited them, not imprisonment, but evolution. They would become the living embodiment of the connection between worlds. "Together," she agreed, stepping toward the portal with Lily in her arms. As they crossed the threshold, Haley felt her form transforming. She wasn't losing herself. Rather, she was expanding. Her consciousness touched multiple realms simultaneously. She could see the patterns of magic that connected all living things across different planes of existence. The portal stabilized, becoming a permanent doorway that would allow passage between realms in a controlled manner. Around it, the clearing transformed into a sacred space where all worlds could meet. Haley emerged from the transformation changed. Her appearance was familiar but ethereal, existing in multiple states of being simultaneously. Lily, too, had transformed. No longer just a baby, but something more. A being of pure potential who would grow up understanding the connections between all things. The mother bear and her cubs had taken on new forms as well, their fur bearing constellations of stars, their eyes reflecting entire galaxies. They took positions around the portal, permanent guardians of its threshold. Haley's grandmother stepped through last, emerging as a being of pure wisdom. The weight of her captivity had been transformed into strength, her long imprisonment now serving as a foundation for her role as teacher to the next generation of threshold guardians. Where the Shadow Walker had once stood, a new being emerged, not gone, but redeemed. His form was beautiful in its complexity, a shifting tapestry of light and shadow in perfect balance. He would serve as a reminder of what could be lost to fear and what could be gained through understanding. The clearing, now known as the meeting ground, became a place where all realms could safely interact. The glowing symbols that had covered Haley's hands expanded to become a language that all beings could understand, regardless of their origin. As morning finally began to break, the storm clouds parted to reveal not just the sky of Earth, but glimpses of other skies as well. The barriers between worlds hadn't been broken. They had become permeable, allowing for conscious interaction guided by wisdom and respect. Lily, cradled in her mother's arms, looked up with eyes that held infinite depth. She babbled softly, But now everyone present could understand her meaning. Family bigger now. In the days that followed, news of the transformation spread throughout both the mundane and magical worlds. Animals began to recover powers long dormant in their bloodlines. Humans, sensitive to magic, found themselves experiencing visions and connections they couldn't explain. But it wasn't chaos. The Threshold Guardians worked tirelessly to mediate, to teach, to guide. They helped establish protocols for safe interaction between realms, created methods for healing rifts that appeared in the fabric of reality, and slowly introduced the wider world to the truth that had always existed just beyond perception. Michael returned from the fire station to find his wife and daughter changed, but not lost. Understanding the situation through the magical connection that now bound all who lived near the meeting ground, he chose to remain in the mundane world as an anchor point, someone who could translate the extraordinary events for those not yet ready to accept the full truth. The cottage itself transformed, becoming larger on the inside than the outside, serving as a way station for travelers between realms. Its rooms shifted and changed according to need. One moment a healing chamber, the next a classroom for young guardians learning to control their gifts. As for the Shadow Walker, now known as the Twilight Guide, he worked alongside the other guardians to help prevent others from falling into the trap of fear and possessiveness he had once succumbed to. His presence served as both warning and hope. No fall was too great to prevent redemption, but vigilance was essential. The Staff of Growth remained with Haley, but its nature had evolved. Now it served as a key that could open controlled portals to specific realms when needed. More importantly, it had become a memory keeper, storing the experiences and knowledge of all who touched it. Lily grew up in this new world, along with children who began displaying signs of guardian heritage. The mark on her forehead evolved over time, becoming a constellation of symbols that changed according to her needs and the needs of those around her. By her 3rd birthday, she could speak fluently in languages that had never been spoken by human tongues. The mother bear and her cubs became the first teachers of an entirely new form of magic, one that emphasized symbiosis between species rather than dominance. Their lessons drew creatures from across realms, creating a first generation of truly universal beings who could navigate multiple forms of existence. The meeting ground itself continued to evolve. Trees grew that bore fruit from multiple realms. Flowers bloomed that could only be seen by those who had touched magic. Underground springs emerged that could heal not just physical wounds, but spiritual ones as well. But with these gifts came responsibilities. Maintaining the balance between realms required constant vigilance. There were forces that sought to exploit the new connections for their own gain. Creatures emerged from forgotten corners of reality, drawn by the concentration of magic. The Guardians worked together to establish boundaries, to create safe passages, and to ensure that the interaction between worlds enhanced rather than threatened each realm. They developed rituals that could strengthen weakened barriers when necessary, and techniques for identifying those who would abuse the newfound connections. As years passed, the true impact of that stormy night became clear. The magical awakening didn't remain confined to the immediate area. It spread like ripples in a cosmic pond, touching beings across the globe and beyond. Ancient sites of power began to reactivate. Ley lines that had been dormant for millennia thrummed with renewed energy. Haley's grandmother established a school in the transformed cottage, training both young humans and animals who showed signs of guardian heritage. The curriculum blended ancient wisdom with newly discovered truths about the nature of reality itself. The white bear, who had been the first bridge, became something of a legend. Children from all realms would gather to hear stories of the small cub who had been brave enough to transform into something greater than itself. Many sought to emulate this courage, though each found their own unique path to bridging worlds. The portal in the meeting ground became the first of many such permanent gateways. Each new portal required its own set of guardians, creating a network of protectors spanning multiple realities. Some portals connected to realms of pure energy, others to dimensions where thought became reality, still others to worlds where time flowed differently than on Earth. But the most important aspect of this new reality was the understanding it brought. The barriers between worlds had never been meant to divide, they had been meant to protect. Now, with conscious guardians maintaining these boundaries, crossing between realms became a matter of wisdom and negotiation rather than force or accident. Through it all, the bond between the human family and the bear family remained the foundation of everything. The trust established in that fateful storm became the template for all future alliances between species. It demonstrated that when fear was replaced with understanding, when power was shared rather than hoarded, magic could enhance all life rather than corrupt it. As Lily approached her 7th birthday, she stood with her mother in the meeting ground, watching as a group of young dragons learned to modulate their flame to avoid damaging delicate forest undergrowth. Her eyes, now permanently swirled with cosmic patterns, reflected a deep understanding of her role in this new world order. "Are you ready for your first solo portal walk?" Haley asked, her own form now subtly ethereal, existing simultaneously in multiple states of being. Lily nodded, clutching the small staff that had grown with her, a gift from her great-grandmother woven from threads of the original blanket that had sparked everything. "The forest sprites need help with their mushroom gardens. The soil is wrong because of the last realm crossing." Haley smiled, remembering when such a statement would have sounded like madness. Now it was simply Tuesday. As mother and daughter walked together toward the portal, the mother bear and her cubs joined them, as they often did, their forms now truly majestic in their evolved state. The clearing buzzed with the soft conversations of various beings preparing for the day's work of maintaining the new multi-realm reality. And somewhere in the background, carried on a wind that blew from no earthly direction, could be heard the faint humming of an ancient lullaby, one that had been born in a storm, transformed by sacrifice, and now sung by countless voices across all the worlds that had been touched by a mother's love and a baby's boundless acceptance of magic's true nature. The story that had begun with lightning and a blanket had become something far greater, a living testament to the power of connection, the strength of compassion, and the endless possibilities that emerge when different worlds choose understanding over fear. And in the center of it all, a child who would grow up knowing that the greatest magic of all was not in power or knowledge, but in the courage to build bridges where others saw only walls. The afternoon sun painted the meeting ground in hues of gold and silver, casting shadows that belonged to no single world but to the space between them all. A space now watched over by guardians who had learned that true power lay not in controlling the darkness, but in sharing the light.